The Truth About Breaking Into the Movies by Ruth Waterbury. Photoplay, January 1927. Part 2. Posing as an unknown movie aspirant, I went to Hollywood to break into movies. I had made a bet of $500 with my editor that I, a reporter, could get into the studios solely on my own merit. Landing in Hollywood, I was nearly overcome by loneliness and the consciousness that beside the average girl in Hollywood, I was about as beautiful as a mud fence. I started to look for work and learned that the Hayes organization had bottled up the casting situation. Its office, the Central Casting Corporation, turned me down flat and said I couldn't get into movies. That made me angry, and I wired my editor I would get in anyway. No girl knows how desperate a thing ambition is until she gets to Hollywood. No girl knows how dreadful a thing it is to fear everyone until she resides in the film capital. Distrust, suspicion, envy, ruthlessness, despair, they all follow on ambition there. I saw it all that morning I started out to defy Central Casting's edict that I couldn't break into movies. As short a time as a year ago, there weren't many casting agencies in Hollywood. They were, possibly, a little vicious. They held out 10 to 15% of the extra's paycheck, and held out to starving extra girls very false hope. Yet they were interested in the extra, primarily because through the extra they secured their own incomes. In those offices, the girl-hunting work met moments of kindliness, specious though it might be, and renewed her courage. Today this has been swallowed up by Central Casting, where efficiency demands that everyone be bright, shining, and relentless. Central has engineered good laws for the extras. It has secured them higher pay, better hours, more courteous treatment. But it has killed all hope for nearly every one of them. Central is as businesslike as a time clock. The studio casting departments are as businesslike as an April cloud. The extra girl today is up against an awful situation between the hardness of the one and the impersonal softness of the other. Like any other girl with Central closed to me, I could only fight the studios. Where could I start? The studios are scattered over a 50-mile radius in and about Hollywood. It takes several days to get around to them all. I went down to breakfast plotting my course. Some 10 of the studio club girls were in makeup. They were the happy ones. The others sat silent and regarded them from beneath their lashes. Tomorrow they might get their innings. You learn to take advantage of anything in Hollywood. I concentrated on one girl, clad in white sequins, and busy eating oatmeal. I took advantage of the fact that she was on the reception committee of the club, and supposed, therefore, to extend a helping hand toward new girls. I asked her point blank to take me to whatever studio she was going. That was when I first glimpsed the Hollywood fear and distrust. I couldn't possibly have been a rival of that girl's. She was tall as I am short, fair and very beautiful. Yet I could see her figuring desperately how to get rid of me. She said she had no influence, that she was taking an 8 o'clock bus, that she'd show me the way to Culver City, but that she just really didn't know a soul in any studio who mattered in the least. But I refused to be dropped, so we rushed along together toward the bus line. She caught my hand as I started to pay the round-trip fare. "Never buy the round-trip ticket," she said. "Try to pick up a ride coming back. It's risky, but it saves you 20 cents. On such risks and economies are movie careers founded. "I'm going to Goldwyn," she said as we were nearing Culver City. "You get off at DeMille's. It's the nicest studio. It would be wonderful if you could get in there. I wish I could help you, but you understand I can't. You get off at DeMille's. Here it is, right here." She was in such a panic of fear that I might come with her, I think she would have pushed me off that bus if I hadn't gone voluntarily. The ghastly fear of Hollywood. The DeMille studio is a lovely place, a great white colonial mansion originally built by Tom Ince, and before it a very black Negro in plum-colored livery bows low and opens the door for you. The girl behind the information window was quarreling with some invisible person. She was, of course, a beautiful girl. Girls in every capacity, clerks to stars, are beautiful in Hollywood. They become the rule rather than the exception, as in other communities. "I'll attend you in a minute," she said, but it was 20 before she regarded me again. Then when I murmured I had come about casting, she plunged a knife through me with her eyes. "Outside, around the corner," she stated with slow, sarcastic emphasis. There was a kindlier girl behind the casting window. "We get everyone through Central," she told me. "Please," I said, "I'm not listed there. If you'll just take my name and address—" "We get everyone through Central," she repeated, and smiled. "But," I started. "We get everyone through Central," she said again, so then I left. Some distance away, against the sky, I saw the sign of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. Culver City, movie-born, is not really a romantic movie city as you would expect. It is a little country village of tiny stucco bungalows and small somnambulant country grocery stores. The studios stand out of it like strange monsters. The exterior of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer is cold gray cement. Everywhere there are signs. This way to the studio of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. This way to the lunchroom of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. This way to the casting office of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. The casting office is a tiny bare room with a fence running across it. On one side is the mob. On the other, an excited young man in a doorway to heaven, reading Office of Clifford Robertson, casting director. The excited young man walked up and down. "Those of you with paychecks, step forward," he shouted to the packed mass of humanity before him. "The rest of you, get out." The paycheck people crowded forward. The rest did not move. The paycheck people got their money, but only a few of them went away. The rest stood as silent, as expressionless as tired horses. "Get out," screamed the young man. "There's nothing doing." No one stirred. I noted there were 3 other women besides myself. I tried to get forward, into line with the young man's eye, but I couldn't. "There's nothing doing. What are you waiting for? Get out, get out." Nobody moved. The outer door opened and a tiny figure came into our crowded corral. "There's nothing doing," the young man started, and then he saw her. "Oh, hello," he said. She was about 5 feet tall, and her lips were crushed strawberries, and her eyes were much too meek. "Hello yourself," she lisped. "Come right in." The young man held open the gate. "There's nothing doing," he screamed at us. "Get out, all of you." He put his arm across the girl's shoulders, and they disappeared into the inner office. The crowd slowly began to dissolve. A bearded man standing next to me smiled. "Work yesterday?" he asked. "No," I said. "Or the day before, or the day before that?" he asked. I shook my head. "Well," he said, "I'm big-hearted. I just made $3.50, so I'm going to treat you 4 girls." He dug into his pocket and brought out several little rolls of mints. "Every girl gets one," he said. I had noticed a gaunt woman next to me. Now she rushed forward and clutched at the man's hands, grabbing the little packages. "No, you don't," he cried. "Give those back. You can only have one." She paid little attention to him. She was already stuffing those candies into her mouth. To her, plainly, they were food. I was trembling a little as I walked down toward Hal Roach's studio. There was a very pert and very beautiful girl behind the telephone switchboard. "Central Casting," she flung at me over her left ear and went back to pushing plugs. 11 o'clock. I stood by the roadside, thinking. How, oh how was I going to break in? How does any girl ever break in? A flivver stopped beside me. The driver was a nice-looking man, and he said he would be glad to take me down to United Artists on Santa Monica Boulevard. He told me about himself as we rode along. He was a carpenter and married. "But I've got her so trained she don't say a word if I'm missing a couple of nights," he confessed. "How about our having dinner together tonight?" "Well," he said when I had replied I feared I couldn't, "I guess you'd better get right out here." I was, at least, back in Hollywood. I plodded along through the sunshine that beats down like bright copper pennies. A black satin dress, high-heeled slippers, a tiny close hat of Austrian velours, or a smart ensemble in New York. During a California afternoon, they can become a menace. I was so hot, and so thirsty, and so tired. "Come back around the middle of November," they encouraged me at United Artists. "Several blocks farther." "Central Casting," said the telephone girl educational. "Miles farther, and no shade anywhere." "We're not doing a thing," said the girl at the fine art studio. She smiled most pleasantly. "I'd help you if I could, but we haven't got a company working." She spied a woman behind me. "Oh, come in, Miss Nelson," she cried to her. "We're casting, and Mr. Jones will be so glad to see you." She looked back at me. "We're not doing a thing," she said. Miles and miles and miles, literally back to Fox's where I had met exactly the same situation, where a red-haired young person went into a studio I had just been told was closed. That was one day. The next, I started out early for Senate's, which is in Glendale. "Try yourself out on a scales, kid," said the man in charge. "You've got to be a shapely mama to get by us." I rode back to Hollywood, transferred, and got another bus for Universal City. A gay and smiling youth took my name. "Registered at Central, Ruth?" he asked. I was getting desperate. "You can get me on their list if you will," I pleaded. "Please help me." "Well, "Come around sometime next month and bring your pictures," he said. "I guess I can fix it up for you then." Back again to Hollywood. I got to Metropolitan the hour the casting office was closed. Many casting offices do close for certain hours every afternoon, but as none of them close at the same time, you can only learn each one's schedule for yourself. A weeping girl was coming down the steps at Warner's. "Don't go in there," she cried at me. "It's always the same in there. Either the casting director's out, or there's nothing doing, or they've got a new director, or something. You can never get in, even for a moment." She went sobbing away. Her beauty in any other city would have stopped traffic. That was the second day. At FBO and at Lasky's, they see all-comers every morning. I was at FBO at 10. "Say, I like 'em little," remarked the assistant casting director, looking me over. "Why weren't you around yesterday? I could have given you a break. Now I don't know when we'll have a thing for girls. We're making war pictures. But I do like 'em little, so you keep in touch with me." Silly as that was, it bucked up my spirits. By foolish words, that man had made me less a commodity, more a person. Lasky's is close by. I entered there happily. When, out of the jumble of more than 60 there, the boy weeded me out and took my name, I laughed with joy. I forgot I was a newspaper woman getting a story. When I got that summons to see a real-life casting director, I was convinced I had personality, ability, even beauty. That's what Hollywood does to you in 3 days. Going down the boulevards, you see the backs of sets against the sky. You see fenced-off spaces. These cars belong to the employees of blank studio. You see bright lights burning fiercely at midday, and occasionally you catch a fleeting glimpse of some wide, vacant, beautiful face that is set to earn its owner $1 million. And a sort of madness comes upon you. You believe it would be more wonderful, more beautiful, to be on the inside of a studio, just to belong, in any way, in any capacity, than to do anything else in the world. You know why girls stay there and starve. You know why boys rob to remain. It takes so much and so little to get in. Success is an accident. Failure is an accident. The mirage occurs. You sniff the gold dust, and your sense of values is destroyed. I know because I went in to see that casting director, expecting anything, prepared for anything. Why I survived the mob, I don't know. I shall never know, for he turned me down immediately. "Go back home," he told me quietly. It was the 4th day. I was subdued. I climbed very quietly on the bus for Burbank and the new First National Studios. I hadn't been out there before, since that studio was so far away from any other. The girls at the club had told me only one company was working. In New York, I would have held such a trip hopeless, but in Hollywood I didn't dare, any more than any other girl there dares, to be hopeless. I couldn't permit myself to fail. I had to take this last chance. The First National Studio is the most beautiful one in the West. The first great studio to be built as a unit with complete modern movie equipment. I stepped slowly off the bus and stopped to see the roses blooming riotously before the low Spanish buildings which are the studio's offices. It was my last chance. I walked up the path to the casting office slowly. I wanted to cry. I had noticed, getting off the bus, that there were 2 holes through the toes of my slippers, and the cap was gone off my left heel, new shoes worn out in my 4 days of job hunting. "You can go in to see Mr. Kelly," said the office boy. There was no one else about. I walked into an inner office. I was so blue and low, I hardly could look up. It would have been something of a joke in the beginning to admit to my editor I'd been beaten by Hollywood, but the joke was gone now. "I may have something for you in a month or so," said the casting director. I looked at him very directly. "Do you mean that?" He smiled. "No," he said. "Then why say it?" I asked. "His name is Dan Kelly." "When I don't," he said, "the girl or boy trying to break in hangs on anyway. They stand here and argue with me. They take up much more time than if I hand them out pleasant lies. And besides, I don't know positively that I won't be able to use them in another month. I never can tell what calls I'll get from the studio. All things are possible here." "Listen," I said, "I'm a newspaper woman. I must break in. Please give me at least a day's work." "That's a new gag," said Kelly. "Why don't you call yourself a countess, too?" I produced my credentials. "That's different," he admitted. "You can work tonight if you want to. Come at 7 and I'll put you on Miss Moore's picture as a streetwalker."